Hi everyone, my name is Maria and welcome to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching this episode. So I recently went to Michael's and I found these watercolors. They were $2 and these are actually for kids. So my daughter was really excited because she wanted to start painting like me. So I thought it was fun to show her what to do with it. However, she actually didn't need much help. She kind of watched me enough to figure out that she needs to dip a brush in water first and then go for the colors. The first thing I'm going to do is dilute colors with water. This of course is very different compared to painting with tubes. Normally I will squeeze the paste onto my palette and then dilute the colors with water. Here I have pans. I am not used to painting with the pans, so what I'm doing is I'm moving colors onto this plastic cover. It's actually a cover that goes on top of these watercolors, but I'm using it as a palette. Before I start talking about the painting process, let's talk about the pricing of these paints. So Holbein watercolors are pretty pricey. The brand is Japanese, and so the set of 12 smaller tubes, the 5 mils, is $52. This is based on art stores online like Blix or Jerry's Artorama. Then set of 12 but 15 mil tubes is $115. So as you can see, it's pretty pricey. And then we have these $2 paints, watercolors. But it's true though, you get what you pay for. You just can't achieve the same results with cheap paints. That's why I'm actually happy that I am doing this comparison so you can see what happens when I'm using these $2 paints versus Holbein watercolors. And I am creating like a very light color mix. It's not even a color mix. I'm not trying to really mix these colors too much. I am just trying to recreate maybe some different shades of blue that I see in the reference image. This is the same reference that I used for the other window I painted with Holbein watercolors. At the end of this video, I will show you the other window painted with Holbein watercolors. I am using the same watercolor paper for both. So this is Honey Mule, the collection 300 pounds watercolor paper cold pressed. This window comes from the same reference of the building. It's just that I chose a window with a different shadow. It's the same thing basically. Right now, I just continue like adding colors onto these smaller wells, and I'm trying to like dilute the pink, for example, and maybe add it to the color mix there. I'm trying to recreate like a gray, and that's the gray that I'm going to use like as an undertone. And then also where you see like areas where the paint from the wall peeled off, so that will be my kind of gray. And it's just a matter of how much red or blue or yellow I add there, because to create a gray color all you need is primary colors, which is red, blue, and yellow, and then it's just a matter of how much red you add to it, or blue or yellow, to determine if it's a red gray, yellow gray, or blue gray. I grabbed a larger brush, so this is 1.5 inches wide brush, and I also started grabbing like the undertone color, so the shadow color, the gray mix that I have created. And then I am also adding like the blue, whatever the name of the blue is, kind of like turquoise. When I paint like this, I'm also trying to do a little bit of dry brushing, and it feels weird a little bit here already, because once I touch the paper with this paint, like on the left side, it dries very fast, and it's hard to like reactivate that area. Like I had a hard time make it smoother. It doesn't have to be smooth at all, and it's okay if I have like hard edges here and patches and like hard edges, blooms. It's okay, because that's the idea of painting this wall, and you will see something similar in my version painted with Holbein watercolors. I am using here a flat 3/4 size brush, which comes from my own line of brushes called Golden 2, and I continue going down. So in the reference we have like way more of those white spots over the wall, so the paint definitely peeled off of it there. but I kind of lost that moment of dry brushing. It was not as easy in a way as I thought it would be, because like I'm getting sidetracked too by looking at the wall overall and how it's drying, because I'm observing all this and I see that the paint is actually getting like muddy in a lot of places, so it's not easy to have that color mix. I'm creating this gray, well, that becomes really muddy if I use too much paint, so I have to be really careful. Overall, like again, the wall is fine because I'm not going for anything perfect. Hard edges are okay, blooms are okay if they happen, because that's just the type of a painting I'm doing and I'm fine with it. And I've painted many of these windows like this, and at first it looks kind of just okay, but then once you paint that window, you add all the shadows, everything comes together and looks really pretty. Whenever I paint a window like this, like I will start with the wall first, and I'll create like an even layer for the wall. I will do lots of dry brushing. I will start with the undertones in a lot of the areas where we see those uneven colors, the tone, and then we see like patches and paint peeling off. Here it's okay, like I have already experienced some muddiness and I realized like the paint is really drying way too fast and it's hard to go back to some other areas. So now that I finished painting the wall, maybe some areas are still wet, but I'm going to start painting those shutters. So I'm trying to recreate what I see in the reference image. It's really hard because like again, I'm used to having like 100 colors to work with. And here like I have 8 colors and I never really use black. And this black, I realized later that it's one of the reasons why the mix that I created for like the shadows caused like all this muddiness, for example. And here I'm scooping all that blue, so let's just say turquoise blue, and some of that purple color. And I am getting this mix ready for the shutters. Whenever like I paint, I don't really try to mix colors on the palette. I try to let these colors to mix on the paper, and so I very slightly stir that in the palette just so like, okay, I see they're starting to mix these colors, but I'm going to let them really mix on the paper or blend slightly so I can still see their separation of colors. Here, like you will see in the second version when, or first, actually that was my first version when I painted it with Holbein watercolors. I used like different colors obviously, and the colors are just so much cleaner, but we'll get to that part in just a moment. Here I'm scooping some of that orange that I have and I'm adding it to that palette, to where I have that big well where I have already like some of the other colors. I'm thinking that I'm going to add the orange, some of the maybe yellow on the bottom of the shutters, and kind of let the blue from the top meet that yellow orange from the bottom. So that's kind of the idea, and I'm trying not to really mix these together because I already know the colors are getting muddy very easily. And please keep that in mind, that if the colors you use from the brand, whatever the brand is, if the colors easily get muddy, it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing when colors get muddy. Yes, some colors will just get muddy when they're mixed together. If they're, let's say, too opaque, that will happen. But generally, like, you should have a range of colors that are clean and cleaner, and you just don't experience this muddiness, because it should be easy really to mix the colors, and it should be easy to be able to create these transparent layers. I have experienced muddiness in the past with Winsor and Newton, and there's also a different brand called White Knights. They also get muddy very easily, so just FYI. So this is a 3/4 flat brush, and I'm starting to paint the shutters. So the shutters are painted also wet on dry, and I grabbed the blue where I already had a little bit of the purple in there, and then some of the green, and I'm observing what's happening on the paper. The paint is quite opaque, so it's not transparent. So that's one of the issues. And then I started to add like the yellows, the orange. So from the bottom, I'm adding the orange with yellow, and I'm pulling it up. So this could have worked out better if later on, like, I didn't add more color on top, and you see that in a second. That's just something I would do when I paint, and I do that when I paint with Holbein watercolors. Like, once I already have created that layer, I'll add a little bit of paint on top. Well, that moment has caused lots of muddiness, and just the colors, like, you can see how opaque everything is. So I just cleaned my brush, and I'm grabbing a little more of the blue, so the turquoise blue, and I'm adding a little more of it from the top. So that's the issue here. The paper, the paint is actually really drying fast. So everything is drying fast, and there's no like nice blending of colors. It's just not happening there. So that's okay too, because again, I'm painting these shutters that are like old, and you can see like the distressed wood, and there's some cracks in there and stuff like that. But here's the mistake I did. So I started adding that black color to the mix, and this is what created like more of that muddiness that just happened here. Too much paint, it became way too opaque. So I should have just given up on this, on adding that black even more. Just leave it the way it was with that orange on the bottom and the blue tones from the top. But I was trying to match it a little bit to what I painted earlier, and just to add some darks. Well, it does not work with these $2 watercolors. It completely didn't work. Overall, like for the walls again, it was okay because we can still see a little bit of the transparency. I had these colors really diluted with water. The problem again started when I started adding like more color on top of a color. This is my gray color mix to create like some shadows and some patches of like some peeled off paint and stuff like that. So I'm dry brushing with a round brush size 8, and this is also from my own line, Golden One. And I'm dry brushing, and I'm trying to make it as transparent as possible, because again, these feel very opaque actually. And dry brushing is just another technique used in watercolors. And what you do is you just don't have much paint on that brush, and you kind of drag that brush over the paint, and sometimes you can actually hear it. It's like scraping almost over the paper. So on the bottom of that frame, I have a little more color, and again, like I already painted this window before. I painted it with Holbein watercolors, just like my normal thing, regular thing, and I really loved it. It's one of my favorite paintings now, but that's why like I wanted to recreate something with these $2 watercolors similar to like my favorite painting, to see how it turns out. I'm adding some of that pink to the color mix, and I added a little bit of that black too in there. It's basically like creating like a gray, shade of gray in a way, and more of the blue because I'm going to add a shadow on the bottom of that frame, the window frame. When you look at the reference image, it's kind of bluish. It's blue violet. Let's say blue violet. You want, like in general, when you create shadows and you want to create a natural shadow, you want to take a look at the color wheel, because you want to determine what is the local color of your object. And then you look at the color wheel, and let's say it's a green apple. You look at the apple, okay, it's green. So what should be the color of that shadow? So complementary color to green is red. So you want to add red to that color mix that you used for the apple. Green with some other colors, whatever you use, or maybe you just use blue and yellow, because when you mix yellow with blue, it will create a shade of green. So here, like, I kind of go with primary colors in general when I paint shadows and those cracks, and then I will add the local color to that shadow mix. It depends. It really depends what kind of the shadow it is, and sometimes like those shadows like really have different colors. And in general, you never want to think that shadows are just gray or black. You always want to refer to that color wheel and think of colors, because that's what will help you to create like natural looking shadows and bring life, like more life into your paintings. In the next couple of minutes, I'm just going to add more texture over the frame and some patches over the wall. And then I'm going to create some cracks over the wall as well. So the main issue will start when I add shadows over the shutters. So we'll get to this in just a second. So here I'm starting to create that big shadow mix for the shutters. So black was a big mistake to use. I should have probably just stuck with the blue, purple, red, and add some yellow. Go with the primaries and just whatever. If it's too light, fine. Still better than adding black and making it so muddy. So black wasn't the only reason why this mix became so muddy and opaque. It's just the nature of these cheap watercolors. So again, you do want to pay attention to like what happens with your colors when you mix them. And again, if you see muddiness all the time, like it's not a good thing. I do not experience much muddiness. Of course, I do pay attention to what pigments I'm using, and sometimes I will use the more opaque watercolors from Holbein's selection, but I will think of it as, okay, I just don't want to mix it with this color or this color. It just depends how you mix it, and sometimes I would just add a splash of color or splatter of color, and that will be enough. So here I'm painting this main shadow wet on dry, and I'm already like seeing this opaque layer over the shutters, and I'm thinking to myself, well, this is not going too well, but I am going to finish it. The thing is that normally when I paint shutters like this, I don't go for the main shadow yet, quite yet. I first go with the little shadows. So I first paint all the little shadows, so the cracks that I see, and we have different, like so many pieces of wood there, for example. So there's 4, and so I will paint those lines first, and then I will go like where we have like nails and stuff like that. I will add some shadows there too. Once that dries, that's when I begin adding that layer for the main shadow. So this is something that I normally do at first before I add the main shadow, but here I didn't care anymore, so I just added this afterwards. I just saw how everything dried with that first blue, yellow, green layer for the shutters, and I thought, well, it is what it is. I still wanted to finish it and compare it to my first version done with Holbein watercolors in tubes. So here I'm just adding the shadows with this muddy shadow mix. So again, generally when you want to create a shadow, think of the primary colors, blue, red, and yellow, and think of the cleanest colors you have. So each brand will have the primaries. So for example, when you look at Holbein's color chart, their primary red is Perot red. Their primary blue is phthalo blue red shade, and their primary yellow is imidazolone yellow. So those are the colors I very often use. However, my main red is actually quinacridone red. But when you do use these primaries, the mixes are clean and you don't run into that muddiness. So I just continue adding more and more shadows, but the painting is pretty much done. So I'm really excited to show you the version done with Holbein watercolors. And finally, the painting is completely finished, and top right you can see my version painted with Holbein watercolors and tubes. So you can see right away how clean the shadow is and what I was able to do overall with the wall, and how well I was able to do the dry brushing and paint with those undertones. There's zero muddiness of colors and everything went well, just as I hoped for. I really hope you enjoyed this quick tutorial. Please let me know if you have any questions, and please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Thank you so much for watching, and happy painting!